JB here. JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Monday, November 10th, 9:18. On this fine morning, talk quick about the markets. Some names I'm looking at. Go from there. Hold on one second. Oh, sorry about that. All right. S&P futures in the red here. Joking around. Uh, sorry. Hold on one second. Having audio issues. All right. Futures are higher on the heels of this government shutdown possibly ending. Joking aside, I mean, we didn't tank after the government shutdown. So it's funny they just make the headlines to rationalize the move. But needless to say, that is, I guess, what folks are citing for this morning's rally. But S&P 677 here on the SPY. So a nice start to the week. I hate gaps, right? So we'll see how things play out here. But this week is kind of similar to what we had last week. It's almost like a news vacuum. There's not much in the way of catalysts. We have earnings, but not as much earnings. So CPI data was supposed to be on Wednesday, November 13th. We're not getting that. We're supposed to get the jobs report on Friday. So outside of that, it's just going to be headline-driven stuff. And, last Tuesday and Thursday we had, or maybe it was Tuesday and Wednesday, we had to sell off 1% to the downside. Then the next day we had the rally of 0.75%, and nothing changed between those 2 days. It's just there was more sellers than buyers and vice versa. Probably going to be the same here. The thing is, though, we are on the I guess the blanket of this AI bubble, and it continues to be chatter the last couple of weeks, probably the last month or so in regards to the capex spend. I keep pulling up new charts, right? This is, I forget where this is, but I'm keeping like a horde of these because every time it seems like there's new uh, pie chart or graph of the capex spend, and you know, it's a lot of money, right? And the thing is, if the capex spend turns out to have great ROI, that's phenomenal, right? And the markets will keep heading higher, and all these names will have monster profits or continue to have it. But if not, then that's where the problem lies. So trying to figure that out is right now has been a moot point, right? If you try to fight this trend, not hasn't been fun. At some point, maybe we do have some kind of pull. Looked like last week was going to be it, right? Friday looked like okay. That if you were a bear and you thought the bubble was about to burst, the Nasdaq was down 2% at the noon hour. Bears could have just continued to pummel it. We could have went into the weekend, and then you'd have all the fear mongers out with it. We could have a nasty Monday, right? Turned out to be anything but. Markets found some footing, and then we rallied, and it was just one of my favorite days of these gap down at reversal days on a Friday, and it was like picture perfect. The thing is, intraday or even in the morning, like half my watch list was still green. So I keep talking about this bad breath, the amount of stocks trading over their 50-day moving average, things like that. Yes, on Friday the market was selling off, and the amount of stocks trading over their 50-day moving average was in the green. So just some to keep some of note. And so maybe we can have the Mag 7 sell off and the market rally. What is it? 8 components on the S&P make up like 40% of the index. So it's hard to see some of these other 492 companies. If they have bad performance, you don't see it because it's being masked. So, all right, that's quick on the overall market. I talked about it on the watch. 673 is a big spot, 679 on the way up. Probably some chop here today. If we get to 679, we got 677.94 in the overnight. And then I would not be surprised we have some kind of pull here. If we do have a pull, want to see that 673 hold. Seems like every time we get these gaps, they sell off. So a lot of times, too, the names, you try and chase at the open, and then that'll be the high today on some of these names. So I'm definitely not chasing calls at the open. I'll be open to some hedge puts if we break 673. I think I'll kind of wait and see at the open. Maybe 11 o'clock or so, we find some direction and then look for some opportunities there. All right, that's overall markets. Now, just quick on individual names. Obviously, Friday, monster day. Days like that can make your month, your week, your year, your decade, or whatever. To sit there and say you have conviction on SanDisk to get the calls. I mean, I remember in the chat room, it's like it was 208. I'm like, those 220s look interesting. And I forget who asked me, like, oh, puts? I'm like, no, calls. And the 220s were 80 cents. Those closed, I think they got up to $20 right at the end of the day. But those are the kind of days you plan for. And people say, oh, is that luck to try and do some of those trades? But I had the puts on the way down in the morning, locked all those in, and went calls on the way up. So some of that is just experience of 15 years trading. These things happen. And, in the midst of the sell-off at the noon hour, again, if you're bearish, you're like, wow, I'm going to double down. I'm going to load the boat. And then I would say the rug didn't get pulled out, but we got that bounce. And then you get destroyed. But, all right, that's overall marks. Just quick on individual names. First, just SolarEdge. If there's a name that I think has the possibility for more FOMO, you look at obviously the backdrop of this AI energy boom, right? The nuclear side of it, but then you also have the solar names. The solar names have been hit more so because of the administration's policies and the reduction of subsidies and all those incentives. but they've come back to life. And if you look at some of the names like SolarEdge was, pretty much written off. They already had the grave dug for it. The shorts were just waiting for the stock to get put into the grave. And then it's been in the midst of a turnaround, cutting costs, getting its inventory down, working on some of the debt. And then now it's kind of like a turnaround story. They were actually cash flow positive. And here's a name that you look was $300 some stock a couple of, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. I'm not saying that's where it goes, but I do think there's an opportunity for more FOMO. You look at this 42 handle. I think if it breaks 42 today, it's off to the races. So end of the day on Friday, added some more strikes, still some freebie 45s for this week. Uh, Gets over 42 at the open. I said I was going to kind of sit on my hands in the morning, wait for direction. This is a name I probably won't. So I'll probably look for some higher strikes. I was saying it last week, sometimes you got to be crazy. Could it be a $60 stock in the coming weeks? If that's the case, some of these names, some of the premiums aren't pricing that in whatsoever, which means opportunity. All right, so that's SolarEdge. Look at a long-term chart too. And again, look at 42 handle. Once that breaks out, it's blue skies. And, you look, $70? Call me crazy. But at the same token, shorts, you look yesterday, Friday, analysts came out and they just upgraded their price targets to 32, 34, 31. And then you still have bearish analysts who have a sell rating and they raise their price target to 28. So not a lot of analysts are thinking this heads higher. Maybe they're right, but if they're not, I think opportunity. All right, SolarEdge. Reddit at the end of the day got some more strikes. I keep talking about at some point not keep talking about, but I'm still shocked it's still not over $300 after its earnings. Broke all the way on, I think it hit 174 on Friday and then bounced. And, at some point there's going to be some redone deals with Google, Anthropic, Microsoft, some of these other names that are using their data. They already have deals, but I think they're going to have to redo them. And so you're going to have news with that. You already had reports a couple weeks ago that sent the stock up in the, I think it was like 11 o'clock, it went up 5%. I think there's some deal. It's up 15, 20% just overnight. So not only that, I think it should be trading up regardless. So I think there's an opportunity. I don't know what my strikes are. I'm pretty sure they'll be in the green, solidly in the green. I don't know if they'll be 100% at the open, but like I've been doing with Reddit, I'll lock some in to cover costs, ride the rest. And then if it gets back over 211, 212, I might look for some strikes into next week, just so I'm ahead of the curve. If number one, if it rallies and rally continues, and number two into next week. So that's Reddit. Still like Roku here, under $100, testing its 50-day moving average on Friday. One of these moves will hold 216. That's a big spot. So I'll continue to look for opportunities on Roku. SERV Robotics reports after the close on Wednesday. I was curious, well, not curious, interested in adding more strikes on Friday before the close, but didn't want to rush into anything that's gapping here in the pre-market. You know the story here on SERV. The issue with SERV, it's still early stage with its revenues, but here's a name. If it just gets just in line with its guidance for next year, it's a 3,000% top line growth for next year, which is insane. Fundamentally sound with this recent $100 million offering. You're talking a $280 million cash hoard, $700 million market cap. So just a lot to like. Partnership with DoorDash. You got the Uber. Anyway, so don't be surprised to add some strikes. The plan today would be adding strikes after 11 o'clock for premium build into earnings, lock some in, cover costs. And I still have some other dates, longer dated strikes, December's, March's. Lemonade still like this setup here. Lemonade under $70 on Friday. Thankfully, I locked most of those 90 strikes in. I'll continue to hold those and then look for other opportunities to play for move over $100. The thing with Lemonade, the December strikes are expensive. So even to try to get some strikes into the hundreds, tough on a risk reward basis. Last but not least, I did the Netflix lottos. Their splits effective today. So I don't know if we'll have a ramp, but if it does, might look for some lottos there. SSYS reports Thursday before the open. That's down 30% since I last played it for the calls. So don't be surprised if I add some strikes just for a bounce, regardless of the earnings, because I think there's a setup to play into the double digits. And that's it, folks. Have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.